Hello everybody and welcome back to the Replayability review, where we take a look at Oculus exclusive games and play them on the Valve Index via Revive. Today we're taking a look at Defector. If you guys are not familiar with this segment, I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review of the game and also a separate review to let you know how it plays via Revive. If you want to jump ahead to any point, there will be timestamps in the description. Defector is a Mission Impossible meets Fast and Furious action-adventure game. You play the role of a secret agent going through a series of ludicrous missions filled with action and spy movie cliches and movie references. You'll find yourself jumping out of airplanes, chasing guys through foreign cities, engaging in aggressive negotiations, and finding yourself in firefights where you are wildly outgunned. On paper, Defector looks like it should be the most intense VR experience to date. Unfortunately, some glaring issues prevent it from hitting its full potential. Mechanically, the game has 4 systems. The first is a dialogue system where you need to persuade people. Generally, you need to either snoop around or read some dossiers, so you have an understanding of your approach in negotiations. From there, it comes down to multiple choice selections, and if you make too many mistakes, you will fail. Now, in the event you did not collect the appropriate data, then you're just going to have to blind luck your way through these conversations, possibly replaying them 1 or 2 times. The next mechanic is VR melee combat, and this is VR combat at its most simplistic level. Now, there isn't a lot of this in the game, but it is a standout in Mission 2. It's simply blocking and counterpunching. It has some high and low points. The combat can be quite visceral, watching black and blues and welts add up on the opponent's face. But an issue that stands out throughout the entire game is very noticeable in Melee Combat 2. There's moments when the game wants you to be acting, and other times where it just wants you to sit there and wait. If a character is mid-dialogue, they are basically incorporeal. You cannot touch them, your hands will go right through them. There's no interaction you can perform with the game. This isn't limited to melee combat. It's a standout during scripted conversations where you have to hand somebody something. If you go to hand it to somebody a second too early, it will just float through their hand. There's also a lack of physics, like a moment that should be quite epic where you grab the opponent's head and slam it against the wall is ruined by the fact that you're just reaching over and clicking the grab button and then they shoot across the room. If pressing the grip button would actually let you hold on to the character's head and swing them around a little bit, then slam them into the wall, the illusion wouldn't be broken and the immersion would be maintained. Frequent immersion breaks are the Achilles heel of this title. The game will also frequently reorientate you, many times pointing into the absolute wrong direction. It's as if the game was designed with a seated, stationary position in mind, where room scale is not used at all. Overall, it's one of the most frustrating issues throughout the entire game. The next mechanic is a traditional shooting mechanic, which ranges from fun to mediocre. You will roam around the map and there will be continuous waves of enemies while you are defusing bombs. On this mission, I found the combat fun, but nothing really stood out. The enemy AI was pretty simplistic and relied mostly on jumping out at you. And true to fashion in this game, moments that you would expect to excel, that look awesome, that read great on paper, don't translate too well. Your dreams of replaying that Matrix moment, flying on a helicopter with a chain gun, are actually ruined by poor mechanics. Operating the chain gun just doesn't handle well. I was extremely excited to get my hands on it, but once in action, I didn't feel powerful. I felt like I was struggling to maintain control. Now, I could understand if this was some type of simulation, but this game is all about over-the-top, Fast and Furious style action. So I just wanted to feel powerful and mow down mounds of enemies. The chain gun should really just have 6 degrees of freedom, and you should just let loose. Instead, it sort of feels like an artificial challenge where the gun just sluggishly moves a little bit behind where you're adjusting it to. And the final mechanic in this game is the locomotion. You will be chasing enemies, hopping across buildings, climbing ladders, hanging off the side of buildings, and even a plane. For the most part, this is pretty cool, but ultimately left me a little underwhelmed. Storyline wise, the game plays out that you are retelling the events of your previous 5 missions. This leaves some option of replayability. You can go back and actually change the events, but unlike a game similar to Detroit Become Human, you're not creating these large new branching storylines. There are unlockable cheats you do get for completing objectives, which also adds to replayability, and I will admit curiosity did get me to replay 1 or 2 missions. Now, to its credit, this game does have some standout moments. This is a solid foundation for a full-fledged game, but it's not quite there yet. Content-wise, the game is a little short. You can beat it in 3 hours. It's only 5 missions long. If you want to replay everything and see how it might turn out, maybe you'll double your time to something like 6 hours of gameplay. Graphically, I found the game very inconsistent. At the very beginning of the game, when you start your debriefing, I was immediately underwhelmed by the graphics. Oddly, I think this is the poorest rendered character in the game, and I kept referring to her as Muppet because it almost looked like her face was a sock puppet. The game also has an odd fade in from white when you enter a new level, and initially I just thought something was wrong graphically until after a few seconds it clears up. But at other moments, the game would really shine. There'd be this really nice cel shading on the characters. Some of the characters, Jimmy in particular, look amazing, and the Cylon wannabe was one of the coolest enemies I've seen in VR. So graphically, the game is a bit inconsistent, just like how the gameplay mechanics and the overall experience is. Now, every mission plays out quite differently, so your experience will vary. You might find mission 1 and 2 the best, and I might think mission 4 is the best, which is just a straight shooter. That leads to this game being a very fun experience, but it's a jack of all trades and a master of none. Ultimately, I'm glad I picked up the game. It is worth your $19.99. And it leaves me intrigued to see what Twisted Pixel will come out with next. From previews though, I had higher expectations, and I was just a little disappointed in this title. Okay guys, moving on to the revivability of Defector. Now I am currently using the pre-release 1.7.0 version of Revive. I was told that previous versions of Revive have an issue with this game. I did not test and confirm. Luckily, version 1.7 works perfectly. Now you will have to have your Oculus services enabled. They're usually turned on by default, but if you're like me, you stop all services you don't want running constantly. You will just have to open up your Oculus Store app, and then from Steam VR, this game will launch normally in your Revive tab. There's nothing special to do. After launch, I did not come across a single issue. Moving into graphics and performance, this game set itself at ultra settings, and it ran perfectly. Now I am using an i7 6700K processor and a GeForce 1080 Ti, so I wouldn't expect this game to perform poorly, but from what I can tell, Revive had no overall impact in performance. I maintained a constant frame rate throughout the entire game. Graphically, I think the first time I launched the game, Steam VR super sampling did not take effect. I did also come across one graphical anomaly during a particular scene, but I cannot say this was caused by Revive. Moving on to controllers, the Valve Index controllers perform perfectly. Overall, my only complaint would be the Index thumbstick, which is a known issue. You do need the thumbstick to run, which is slightly clunky in this game. I'm giving this game a 9 in every category of revivability. While the game plays perfectly, you do need to update to the latest version. While graphically everything seemed perfect, I believe super sampling did not kick in on first launch, and the controls are a perfect match, just Valve's thumbstick can be a little frustrating. I do not recommend the HTC Vives overall in Revive, especially with smooth locomotion games. Overall, they just don't translate that well. I did briefly test this game with my Vive Pro and didn't notice any immediate issues. Okay guys, as always, I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know if you like that I'm checking the revivability of these new games. Overall, the hardware is just one part of the VR experience. We need great software to push the medium forward. So if you enjoy what I'm doing, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, leave me some feedback, let me know what you want to see or what I did wrong or anything you want to say, and maybe consider subscribing. Alright guys, I'll see you on next time.